Um, there's definitely been a lot of stories in the news and a lot of things happening in this world this year alone. Um, I think we're seeing just the beginning in terms of uh, the turmoil that's happening in our societies, politically, economically, socially, uh, and definitely climately. The climate, the weather, and these so-called natural disasters have pretty much blanketed 2010. Um, I guess right now what's really disturbing to see at 2000 at the end of this year is uh, Cote d'Ivoire, or the Ivory Coast, that is known in West Africa. Um, to see the impasse and the violence and just the kind of self implosion that's happening over there, and coming to terms with the fact that, you know, it's clear that even though Africans are very aware of their history, I think a lot of Africans on the ground are not very aware of their history. And that history includes the Berlin Conference of 1884, where the European nations got together and pretty much divided all of the little states, nation states that we see on the continent. And um, this has carried on and on and on down to basically the thieves fighting amongst themselves to ensure that, they can, either continue to be puppets or they can continue to pilfer from their people. And we haven't had any really strong, dynamic African leaders come out of Africa since the 1960s. Unfortunately, Kwame Ture, I mean, who also um, had some, internal struggles within his own country and people, but relative to the dynamic in which people like him and Sekou Toure and Patrice Lumumba and the people who be really wanted to be forth thinking and about Pan African and African solutions, and a lot of that had to come down to Africans taking on the responsibility of their own social dynamics and political dynamics, and but all within the context, if they were be allowed to be played, by the ruling powers of the time. And even though colonialism, or rather African countries, have gained their independence, they're still not really independent, really, are they? Um, just like African Americans, we have our so-called rights and freedoms now, but we still really don't have them, do we? you know, so there's like still this dynamic that's playing all over the globe in terms of African people and their liberation and being able to soundly make political and economic decisions that is in the interest of them on a global level. Like, we haven't had that type of dynamic, and we haven't seen leaders come out of Africa anymore with that dynamic and like really projecting a Pan-African viewpoint, in which they have really done the study on their continent, not just on their turf or their country, but they've done the study on their continent, and they've also done the study pre colonial times, when their country was not even a country, when it was really just land that was for the people. And, so I just think at this time, African countries really need to examine their independence, and the people really need to examine what is it that they're fighting for, because politicians, even in the African sense, um, you know, the loyalties go deep, and as a result, people are really jaded by this presumption of power that either um, President Gbagbo or President Utara or whoever has, because I think that either way, both of them should step down, because there hasn't, if there hasn't been declared, then both of them should step down. Like what if both of them just stepped down, because their um, their disagreement is creating a very nasty, nasty situation in Cote d'Ivoire. And pretty much, you know, anytime something happens in one place, it's going to flow over to somewhere else. And it's sad in this day and age, in 2000, going on 2011, that African countries have had their so called independence for over 50 years. Some of them, um, that they're still having political um, subjugation, and a lot of it has to do with their resources and who controls those resources, and um, because really does those politicians really change the dynamics of their people and how they're living? And I don't see that in African leaders today. Um, but that's in like most politicians today. We don't really see an authentic, genuine concern for the welfare of the liberation of their people. It's all about, their greed and their, who they politicking with, and who and what they can get under the table. And it's terrible. And I don't see how Africa can ever claim its unity or its being and having an African Union when there's still these really, tender spots with the least abruption can create, massive amounts of problems that takes years to recover from. You know what I'm saying? So I don't understand that dynamic in African politics and why they're so gung ho on supporting or, taking violence out on one another because of that. Because it almost looks like a gang war, like a drug war or something like that, where people just. But either way, it's really messed up, and I think for 2010, I'm really sad, because I see so much of this. So much of this is being reported in the news, and it's not just Cote d'Ivoire. It's almost everywhere in Europe. It's lots of people. Um, Sudan is also going through some things, and definitely still going on in in Palestine. And the conflicts are continuing to just continue and continuing. And even right here in the U.S., um, the uncertainty of people's livelihoods is really, I think, going to change the dynamic in which how people start relating, to each other. And so, I hate to end on a somber note for 2010, but I definitely want to say, my African people, please stop fighting. Please stop killing each other over things that's beyond our control. And yet let us get control of the things that we can for ourselves, for our generations, for the continent, so that we can have somewhere to call home. Because no one wants to go to a broken home. No one. So with that, I bless and send my blessings to everybody here from Roots TV. Want to give you one love, one shout out to everybody. Have a beautiful, prosperous 2011. And just, may the great ancestors keep you all. I'll be back forward, just coming strong. One Roots daughter. Peace and blessings.
Africa.